You're all set.
Okay. Hey everyone, how are you? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to actually take my share screen off. I just wanted to say hi everybody. Karen Young here, a fellow of the Association of Dental Implant Association Auxiliaries, certified educator, speaker, blah blah blah. Anyways, I love this particular topic. We're going to be talking a little about the rationale. We're going to be talking a little bit about the facts and figures, just a real quick synopsis, but more importantly, implantology. Where did it all begin? Right from, I mean, it started from Tusks to titanium. I just love this title. I think it's so appropriate. Let's get moving right along here, though, and figure out what is happening with my screen now. Here we go. So, ADI has got a new logo. I'm really, really excited. Love the new logo. Love the old logo. This particular webinar here tonight, just a little bit of information, is actually part of, I'm going to stop my sharing though, so you don't see my picture. So I'm not just, oops, sorry, I went too far. Hold on a second. Oh, Karen, bear with me one moment. So sorry. My apologies. I get too excited sometimes. That's my problem. I have to go up here and stop the video. There we go. Now you can't see me. There's no distractions. So I'm so excited about the new one. But what I wanted to say is this particular program, and there are going to be three following. The next one is going to be with Abby Bobbitt. She's going to be on May the 1st, talking about everything dental, like dental implants 101, basically. These are four webinars that are going to work towards a new certification, like a new type of status with the ADIA, and this is going to be your master's program. So by attending all four of the webinars, spending an hour with us, what we're doing is we're taking those hours away from the actual theory part of the full day certification programs, because good news is we have completely revamped those certification programs. Now we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes, talk for that in the morning. You're going to be breaking out into those segments with those groups. And then in the afternoon, we're doing all hands on. So you're going to be rotating. There will be four different stations. You're going to be rotating. We have got such exciting people that are going to be helping us with this, and tools and apparatuses. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to, you know, um, dental hygienist, cleaning sub, what instrument do we use? Guess what? We've got the best of the best coming. We've got Cindy Rosette in the house, and then we've got actually Dr. Jonathan Mish that will be there with us, and actually placing implants. So you're going to have a chance to do that. And we've got a renowned dental assistant as well, that who's got her fellowship with the ADIA, who's going to be there showing you setup and sterilization techniques. And myself will be there demonstrating all different types of tools that we can use to enhance patient awareness and acceptance, so that they're making a choice that's best for them. So really exciting. And then once you've completed your master's program, which is a full day certification program, which now includes the four segments of hands-on and these four webinars, you're going to be yourself one step closer to getting your fellowship. We have revamped this to try and make it more accessible for people. So I'll explain a little bit that to you later. And if you have any questions, you can either reach out to, um, I don't know why this is not working. This is so silly. You can either reach out to Tara or myself as well, and I have her information enclosed. So when it comes to pictures, we always have to say where they come from. Most of mine are from Pixabay, or I have them noted where they're coming from. There are a couple that I do pick up from the internet, but I just closed that, of course, as well. So the ADI programs and missions, we're all about trying to encapsulate the best experience educationally wise for you as an individual, so that you can go back to your practice and you can really, really start to implement what you've learned, what you're hearing. And I mean, now incorporating a hands-on program, I think it's going to excel to be one of the best programs out there. I'm so excited about it. One of the things you do get with your memberships is an ISOI glossary of implant dentistry. I'm just attaching a little copy here for you. This is actually the website you can go. It is actually a PDF. There's actually 162 pages. You name it, anything that you want to know about dental implants, dental terminologies. This is an example of one of the pages. This is what you're going to see. It is fantastic. So back to that slide again, in case you want to take your picture out, take your camera out, take a quick picture. This is our gift to you for becoming a member with the organization. I'm just giving you tidbits up on this that you can actually have this as part of your tool to help you move forward so that you completely understand what everyone is talking about in this crazy world about implant dentistry. So this is just a little bit about making yourself accessible to get towards your fellowship. I'll be honest with you. I obtained my fellowship. Well, I'm jumping ahead here. Let me skip one slide. This is Tara's contact telephone number and her email address. So feel free. Tara is my partner in crime with the ICOI and the ADIA. And she's accessible. I'm accessible. My email contact will come at the end as well. Don't hesitate to reach out to either one. So this is where I was saying. So in 2004, I had the distinguished honor of obtaining and receiving my fellowship status with the International Congress of Oral Implantology, which is under the auxiliary component known as the Association of Dental Implant Auxiliaries. Let me tell you, having the esteemed late Dr. Carl Misch present that to me meant more to me than I can ever share with anybody. Like the feeling that stays with me, knowing that I obtained 120 hours of implant education. I attended all of the certification programs. I wrote articles, I did presentations. And then because I was so passionate about sharing what I was learning in the industry, I mean, I took other stuff and continued, going through Toastmasters and Dale Carnegie, doing my teaching certificate. If you really want to do something like what I'm doing here tonight, please reach out to me. I encourage you. I will help you. I'll mentor you any way you wish, because I want to see more people join this prestigious organization and really excel, because that's what makes them happy. There are so many friends. There's Vabi putting her nice little lovely tanned arms around me, and Kathy Carlson beside me, and then Susan Wingrove. If you don't know these ladies, they're all part of this amazing organization, have been around for years. So we're going to talk a little bit about, as I said, from Tusks to Titanium, where did it all start? So this is just the course outline, and we're going to get right into this. You can see just from this page alone, we have gone a long way. I used to get asked so many times, well, how long have dental implants been around, and how successful are they, and when did they first start getting placed? And I didn't have the answers to any of these questions. And it's not so much that your patients are asking you this on a daily basis. I mean, they're still asking you, I mean, do you guarantee them? How long will they last? Questions like that. And I've always said the more knowledge that we have pertaining to the questions that we're being asked, the more confident we came across. And when we become more confident, I feel that patients will trust us more. And that's what this is all about, because I've always said higher case acceptance is not about production. It's not about production. It's not about paying bills. It's not about buying more sundries. Higher case acceptance is always meant to me, and I know the association of the dental implant auxiliaries is the same, is because we are actually allowing our patients to become healthier. And that has always been with me. So whenever I've presented cases to patients, I've always done it with empathy. I've always done it with confidence, and I've always done it with a lot of care, because at the end, I want them to choose the procedure that they feel is most confident, because in the end, it doesn't really matter if they pick an all-on AOX or if they do overdentures, implants supported. At the end of the day, they're making themselves healthier. So you can see that we've got a long way to go from when this all started. So there's actually archaeological evidence that humans have attempted replacing root form implants for thousands of years. Thousands. I mean, there was evidence before Christ. So let's take a look at this. Egyptians placed value on the appearance of how they were looking, because they were concerned about how they were going to be received in the afterlife. And so there was a lot about, if we're missing our teeth and we don't look the way we're supposed to look. And when you were in royalty back, in 600 AD and whatnot, if you lost a tooth or teeth, then they had to look at replacing them because you were of prestige, and people of prestige just didn't have teeth that were missing. The very first dentist that ever existed that there was documentation about was in ancient Egypt. And on his tombstone, it was engraved the words, the greatest of those who deal with teeth and of physicians. So he was some type of doctor, dentist. And I found it quite comical to see this, but this was back in 2600 BC. So we're going quite far back. This is actually a dummy a mummy that was found faux bad there of jawbone, where they're actually showing what bridges used to look like. They were very um um I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but to think about actually taking other people's teeth, because that's usually what they did. Sometimes they took your own if they were able to, but a lot of times they would take the teeth of others. A lot of times it would be slaves and whatnot. They also took it from different sources, but they would use a lot of gold. Don't ask me how they spun this gold. I have no clue, but there was evidence found of bridges that were put together, and this is what they look like. I mean, when you think about it, they're pretty unique. I mean, they're not. You can see there's no. They're not integrated into the bone, so I could imagine that the recession was there, but nonetheless, they had the idea that somehow we need to keep the teeth looking intact. And 3,000 years ago, it was in France that when digging up a grave, they found a 23-year-old female that had a dental implant that took the replica of metal. And it was like an iron pin that was put in. Now, you can imagine how excruciatingly painful this would have been. I mean, taking a iron pin and hammering it into your jawbone, hammering it in down through the tissues. I mean, let's face it, okay? There was a lot of things that we didn't have back then that we have today that we're so privileged to have. But there you can see where it was actually identified, and that's what it looked like. I mean, Novocaine wasn't even invented to 1903, and never mind Novocaine. I mean, fortunately, alcohol was produced in ancient Egypt as early as 4000 BC. Don't have a clue what it tasted like, but all I can say is thank goodness someone did finally find that, because when I speak to my patients all day, there are times that I like to come home and have a glass of wine too. I love Kermit the Frog. So, historical overview, looking at it again, they used to not only use human teeth, but they also used a lot of shells and ivory. Again, the same excruciating type of placement, but nonetheless, for them, it was very important to always have teeth in your mouth. It was all about appearance. And I can understand why they thought shells would be a good idea, because if you look at a tooth and you look at a shell, there's a lot of comparison there. So it looks similar. They'd also use the tusks of elephants. That was very common as well. They would also, there was evidence to support that they used jade, which we all know is very strong. And about 4,000 years ago, there was evidence in China where they actually were using some forms of bamboo. Now, if you have never come across bamboo, bamboo is very strong. I mean, when it's green, it's a little bit different, but when it hardens and it takes that more sand color on, it is extremely hard. Here's another example of the bridges, again, always using gold. So there must have been more of an abundance of gold back then, or they just felt that that was the best product to use. I wish I understood more of that, but I don't. But that's what they used. Now, maybe it was because it was royalty, and so they had an abundance of gold. I'm not really sure. The average person didn't walk around with their teeth replaced like this, but these were more people of stature or people of royalty. George Washington, that's an interesting story because he was given a full set of dentures in 1789, and those dentures were purely cosmetic. I mean, do you think he could actually eat with something like this? I mean, these were his dentures. He couldn't eat with them. I mean, he had to take them out just to eat. But if you didn't have dentures, and for somebody that was the president of the United States, He had to signify that he didn't have poor health and that he did have good health. I mean, we know today that there's a correlation between periodontal disease and, the P. bacteria that travels all through our hearts and through our brains, causing all types of other problems with our body. But back then, they just looked at it that you either were identified as being very poor or being in poor health. So that's why he had only started out with one tooth. And this is where I always say, it is so important to understand when we're talking about dental implants to patients, and this is not this topic tonight, but I have to say this again. We need to treat one tooth with a one tooth solution. Stop grinding down adjacent teeth and talking about every other option. We need to talk about that one option. And if you want to know more about case acceptance, you need to see me in Orlando because I will be there and I'm excited to hopefully see all of you there as well. So very, very important. In 1700s, there was a gentleman by the name of John Linter who actually started suggesting taking one tooth from another human being and then using it as placement. I mean, even George Washington had the teeth of slaves in his mouth. It sounds a little bit barbaric, but some people they would actually want to sell their teeth because they had no money, and that was very common as well. We're living in completely different times. Can you imagine your wife or significant other, I mean, actually standing there and wanting to take your tooth out? I'm not sure of who the correlation is here, but I just feel this picture is just so nonchalant, so easygoing. I mean, in most cases, what was happening is that they were tied down to chairs and held down because, like I said, there was no Novocaine back then. This wasn't invented until the 1900s. So I mean, young children, especially if they had a tooth that had to be extracted, there was no alcohol that they could be drinking or Novocaine. So it wasn't a really, really pleasant experience. We're very, very fortunate today that we have the science that we have behind everything that we do now. In 1791, there was an individual by the name of William Gregor. And I found this to be really interesting because he was actually the first person to discover titanium. And because he didn't take it very much further and didn't have a lot of documentation, his discovery was basically forgotten. And it wasn't until later that another man by the name of Martin Heinrich, a German chemist, that also was credited for the discovery of uranium. The beautiful thing is, as time went on, titanium just flooded the industry. Titanium got to the point where everybody realized that this metal is so lightweight, it's so soft. I mean, it's so strong, it's so lightweight that it can be used for so many things. So titanium took over by storm, but we still didn't understand all the osseointegration and whatnot. That came a little bit later. I came across this article, and actually, this did come from Dr. Carl Misch. If you look at the purple air at the bottom, this is dated 1858, and they're talking already about bone loss, losing of teeth. And if you look at the two pictures, you can actually see that that's what they're talking about. Dr. Carl Misch always used to say that if someone became completely edentulous and did not replace their teeth, when the nose hits the chin, he called that term the witch's beak. And that was basically what was happening in that picture there. There was so many different types of implants that were designed and made. Dr. Greenfield came out with this cylindrical basket that he made that was, coated with different types of material, even gold. And he, at that point, that was 1913, he started already saying no matter what type of material we're using, though, I'm starting to realize that we do need to have good contact with bone and the implant in order for this to take it to the next level. But a lot of these implants all failed because of rejection, because they weren't still using the products that we used today, and they weren't applying them the proper way. They just didn't have the technology that we have today. I mean, we have CT scans that allow us to see three-dimensional and focus exactly where we need to place our implants today. The subperiosteal seal was actually invented by Dr. Dahl in 1938. And if you've never seen this, back in 1938, they didn't, of course, have the technology we do today with having digital scanning. They used to have to cut and flap the entire tissue, open it up, take an impression, and then send that to a lab to fabricate this subperiosteal seal that basically would sit on top of the ridge of the bone that was left. This was very popular for patients who had a lot of bone resorption, had a lot of atrophy. There wasn't a lot of bone to actually place implants, so they would put them over top. Um, they had a lot of issues back then. They failed quite often. There was like a 50% success rate. And a lot of it had to do with the occlusion too, because they're not being screwed into the bone using that terminology. They were basically resting on top. It was in 1952 that the infamous Dr. Brennemark discovered osseointegration. Osseointegration meaning basically where the implant is fused to the bone to the point that you can't separate it. And it was discovered through an accident. He took the femur of a rabbit and he placed a titanium rod into the femur of that rabbit. And when he tried to remove that rod, months later, he realized that he couldn't, that if he was going to remove it, he was actually going to have to break the bone in order to remove that rod. Hence the term osseointegration came about. And hence we realized that titanium, and that's why we use that term today, it's bone loving. We know that titanium loves bone. That's why you're going to see it in, hips and knees and all over the place now. In shoulders, you're going to see it because our body actually accepts it. In 1963, Dr. Linko, another very Leonard Linko, well-known person in the industry that has contributed a lot. He actually came up with the vent implant. It was the very first self-tapping threading implant that went on, but it was not made of titanium. So again, it had a lot of challenges. When did the first implant ever get placed? Now that's a great question. I'm going to answer this the safest way I know. The most documented recordings of any implant that was placed was recorded by Dr. Brennan Mark, and it was placed in 1965 after he had been doing years of studying. He was doing even speaking engagements, trying to tell other dentists about his findings. He was constantly laughed off the stage. People were thinking, what are you talking about? You can't put something in the mouth that's metal and expect to put a tooth on top of it and it's going to last. Well, he proved everybody wrong because he did. So there I justify by saying it is the first well-documented and well-maintained dental implant thus far. How long did that implant last in that person's life? It actually lasted in his mouth over 40 years. So this is the gentleman that received it, and he was actually referred to as an oral invalid. I don't think we would ever call our patients today an oral invalid. Do you not agree? I don't think so. But having said that, he did. And when asked, and this is $1 million question for any of you that have ever heard me speak before, I use this phrase day in, day out. When I'm talking to my patients, I'll always say, what is important to you? What is important to you? Because I want to understand their value. I want to understand why is it that they want dental implants. And he just said, I wanted to have teeth again. He was considered an oral invalid. He didn't like that. He was a professor. He said, no, I want them. He died 40 years later with his implants still intact. So when patients ask you, how long do they last? We can have all these scientific evidence to support that say, oh, they'll last, over 10, 15 years. We have a 96% rate, 97% rate. The answer is undeniably, they should last a patient the rest of their life. There is no ifs, ands, or buts on that one. Where we have to clarify that is, but Mrs. Jones, we need to see you on a regular basis. You need to come in for your hygiene appointments. We need to maintain them. You need to do your home care. And home care is something we'll discuss at a later date, not today. But there are so many things that a patient must be compliant with. And if they're compliant with A, B, C, DEF, then they could potentially have those implants the rest of their life. And why wouldn't they? Implants are the closest thing to natural teeth, and they act and feel just like one. I have a dental implant in my mouth. I can't tell you from one tooth to the next that it's in my mouth. It functions the same as the tooth beside it. So we can very confidently say to our patients that they can and they should last you the rest of your life. But just like periodontal disease, if that's where you got today, we have to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And we need to put you on a strict regime so that that doesn't happen. Did you know that the next person that actually went ahead and got dental implants from from Gustav Larson was his cab driver? So this is another really, really important fact because knowing it's the cab driver, this is not a professor, this is not a CEO, this is not the president of a company. You know, people always say, oh, money, money, money. Money is an objection. It's not an objection, it's your objection. And I can show that and demonstrate that to you when you come to Orlando, when you attend one of my full day programs. But it is not the major objection. The major objection is so many other things. I mean, they've got fear, they've got unknown, they don't understand what you're talking about because you're still talking in dental terminology. We need to talk to patients so that they can understand us. I love this phrase because I think it's so heartwarming. No one should die with their teeth in a glass of water. And this is Dr. Brenna Mark's phrase. Unfortunately, he did pass in 2014, but he's given us so much to be grateful for and to be able to thank that. Again, Dr. Leonard Linko invented the blades. I know a lot of you will be familiar with them. They did actually have to have support of natural teeth, though, which is not something we would ever recommend now because if we have an implant placed and we have a natural tooth, we don't ever want to bridge those together because of physics. Your bite forces on the implant can actually cause the implant to fail or actually the natural tooth to fail. It's just a little bit different from forces, so we can't do that. The Ramus frame was invented in 1970, where it was more placed into the ramus. Again, things like this, a lot of people were trying to come to the forefront. And this is a brief version of the historical overview here this evening. So we're not touching into everything. I'm trying to show some of the highlights and some of the things that I thought were kind of interesting because even when we look at the ramus, it's like, well, where did that go afterwards? 1975, they came up with the tranostocele, which went underneath, and then it was well, basically screwed into your jawbone. Again, if you look at that picture there with the Panorex, you can see that the mandible bone is so atrophied. It's so resorbed. There's nothing there left. So again, this would have been a great, but a lot of these did not succeed and they didn't use them long term. And if this was ever used, it was used strictly on the mandible. In the end, through thousands and thousands and thousands of years, there's basically three types of implant systems that we use today. There's still the transosteostele, there is still the subperiosteostele, and then there is the screw that we refer to today as the titanium. I don't like using the word screw because I think it's a really negative word to use. We call it titanium, but this picture did have it listed as a screw, so I'm just clarifying that for all of us. But this is the one now that we tend to use the most today for all of our implants. So that's where it's come down to. 1988, which I wasn't sure when this happened, but the first zygomatic implants were actually placed in 1988. Again, Professor Brennemark came across this, figuring if there wasn't enough bone, maybe we can place it into the cheekbones and there would be enough bone there. I always say, be very careful when you're doing something like this. If your doctor's into this, that's great. I always say be well educated, be well trained, go to the facilities that will train you well on this. I know we've got the Mish Institute with the ICOI. There are programs out there to learn. I have seen cases where they weren't done very successfully, and to remove the implant would have been causing more harm to the patient than good. So the patient had to live what the consequences were. 1998 is when the first tilted implant and therefore came on the all-on-4 treatment concept. Today, they're calling it the AOX, meaning we're going to place as many implants as we can. The all-on-4 trademark is still there. And that's a trademark through a company, an implant company called Nobel. But now we're trying to put as many implants and most of the time in patients to see. But this is an incredible concept because patients can literally have implants placed the same day. So all of their teeth are removed. Bone is either removed, bone is added wherever it needs to be done. It can be less invasive because it's one surgery. The patient will actually, if they're put through to sleep through IV sedation, they're awoken to a mirror with a beautiful set of teeth. I've witnessed this numerous and numerous times, and there's always tears in the patient's eyes because they're just so overwhelmed with how beautiful and how confident they feel as soon as they're waking up. I love this picture because there is some wonderful people here. Dr. Kenneth Judas, which is to my left, which would be obviously then, I guess, to your left. Dr. Leonard Linko is in the middle, and then the infamous, esteemed Dr. Carl Misch, who I have a lot of gratitude for because that man did teach me so much. I wouldn't be who I am today if I did not have this man behind me. So he was the co-chair of the ICOI and an educator globally in the implant dentistry. And we're very grateful that he did have a lot to contribute to our organization. In May of 1982, Dr. Jorzar organized the Toronto Conference of Osseointegration. Why am I so excited about this slide? Well, because I'm from Canada. And yeah, I don't live in Toronto, but like I used to live in Toronto. Now I live in a beautiful little town 2 hours north of it. But he actually hosted this, and this is where implants were brought in. And this is where Dr. Brennan Mark actually presented his two-stage, which what he did on Dr. Professor Larson. And he was accepted. He had enough evidence to support this works. And this is where everything started to take off. And as you can see on the right-hand side, everything just kept evolving and going on. We realized that we need so much more ongoing education because this industry of dentistry is constantly evolving, and that is the great thing. So if you want to learn more, 2024, I put that in there. I had to plug it. I'm sorry. I'm being a little bit here cliche, but I think it's kind of fun. I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to it. Rationale for dental implants. So let's take a little look at the rationale for dental implants here. Why is it so important? Why is it so important? So we've got a good understanding now. I think we're going to feel a little bit more confident being able to say to our patients now, yeah, they could potentially last a lifetime. This is what needs to be done. Okay, so that's the first step of this webinar here tonight. Now we can look at the physical effects of edentalism. So somebody that loses all of their teeth, they are a stage 4 advanced periodontal disease. We're talking mobility, we're talking about bleeding, probing, bleeding if they're flossing. They're not able to really eat their food properly. I have a very good friend in the industry, Carrie Lepchek. I just wrote an article with her. She said that they qualify patients as saying that's hospice care. So for their teeth, it is sad because once they're at stage 4, it's like it's too far gone. So now all of these teeth have to be removed. There is no trying to save anything at stage 4 anymore. Did you know though, at this point, they're losing up to 80% of their functioning for chewing. 80%. They've lost all their teeth and they've got what's left behind. How do you eat food? How do you actually manifest and digest your food to stay healthy? Because this is, again, going back to that whole segment where I was talking about being healthy. If you can't chew your food properly, then how are you supposed to not have added health problems that are going to go on? I mean, the food that we eat, the choices that we make such an impact on our overall health. So this is why becoming fully edentalism is not healthy. Some people will say, oh, my dad lost a tooth, then he lost a second tooth, and then he went in and had all his teeth removed and was in full dentures. He never really complained. Well, so did my dad. My dad was there too. My dad was uncontrolled diabetic, so we were not able to even investigate that scenario for him. But having said that, my dad was never happy. He was never happy. There was times that he took his dentures out. He was doing something in the morning and he knew that we saw him and he was shamed. There were times as children we laughed at him. The only thing my father, I felt, knew he could do was just to engage in it. And so sometimes he would try to make a game out of it so that he wasn't feeling like we were laughing at him, we were laughing with him. As we grew older and I look at it back now, I feel bad because I even know that to this day that sometimes when people will say, have you ever kissed somebody that has dentures? And I hear ooh and ugh and whatnot. But think about certain people that have no other choice. I mean, there may not be another choice because there are some contraindications. There's only a few, and they're very little, why you cannot have dental implants. So somebody that maybe is stage 4 periodontal disease may have no choice and to go into dentures. And it's not the way someone wants to live their life. Do you know how many pounds of pressure a crocodile will bite down into? There's a saying that if you get into the wrath of the crocodile, you're not getting out. You're either going to lose a limb or you're going to lose your life. They are very strong creatures. I was in Mexico for 2 months this January and February, staying down there in a condo, and I walked the PTL River. I was in Puerto Vallarta, and I walked the PTL River. We were down by the marina. We were seeing crocodiles all the time. Did I engage in them? Did I get close to them? No way. I don't even you don't even take a chance with these beasts. They bite down with 5,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. So, what does that all mean? Let me tell you. You can take a look at this next graph, and the human being is at the top where they're saying 150, and the actual amount is anywhere between 150 to 250. All depends, male, female, how old you are, what race you are, what culture you're coming from. But if you look all the way down at the bottom, the crocodile, this one says 3,700. I apologize. It is 5,000. That should have been updated. So it is actually 5,000. So look at the difference between 150 to 5,000. That is a lot of PSI. So when you're biting into something and you are in dentures, and you have such little PSI, now you've gone down from 150 to 250, and now you're in dentures. They say it drops 50% in the first, like immediately almost. You're dropping down half. So if you are at 150, you're down to 75. How do you bite into an apple at 75 PSI? It is really, really hard. And did you know that after 15 years of wearing dentures, your bite force is reduced down to 6 psi? That's why a lot of patients that are elderly and they're wearing dentures, they're eating a lot of soft food. You go into any assisted living or nursing home, with elderly patients, elderly residents, and they're wearing dentures. They're on a soft food diet, not because of choice, not because they want to. They don't have a choice. This is the way it has to be for them. They just don't have the force. And to wear dentures consistently, there's only one time that the bones stop shrinking. And the bones stop shrinking either when you get an implant placed, and in this case, it wouldn't be applicable for them, or you die. That's when the bones stop shrinking. So 6 psi is not very, very healthy for patients that want to still maintain a really good sense of oral health. Physical, emotional effects of aging and having to lose teeth. It's not easy. As a treatment coordinator for decades, patients that were being told that they had to have their teeth removed, didn't matter if it was 1 or 3 or 4, a lot of times they would start to cry because they associated with that with maybe getting old. Maybe they associated with something, that they were in poor health or they weren't taking care of themselves. But in the end, it really started to come. If they didn't have all their teeth, they felt a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-confidence. And think about all the confidence that you have. And imagine tomorrow having to have all your teeth taken out. It really does reduce the quality of your life. And patience, let's face it, patience, society, every time you go out somewhere now and you're meeting with friends, usually it's always socialized around food. So if you're eating food and you and I are eating a beautiful, crispy salad, with lots of crunch in it, and the person beside you is ordering a soup because that's all they're going to be able to eat, it makes a big feeling for them. And then as soon as they finish eating, even eating the soup, they've got to run to the bathroom and remove those dentures because of the food that's trapped underneath. It's not always pleasant. In the very first year that you have a tooth extracted without placing anything in there, your bone can actually resorb up to 63% depending on where it is in your mouth. So if you had it in your number two, let's say, okay, your upper right in number two, and you had the tooth taken out, your bone is actually going to shrink faster and quicker and um, maybe even more because that area of bone is a lot weaker up there than it is in your 2.4, 2.5 area. And I'm thinking of US terminologies for dental teeth here. So it can make a difference right down to where it is in your mouth. And sometimes when patients will say to you, can I wait to have this implant placed? I'll get the tooth taken out. I'll have the socket grafting done. That's a great question. I always say to them, but let's take a look at where it's located in your mouth because in certain areas, it may expedite the amount of bone loss you're going to have in that area, depending on where it is. So that's a 4 to 7 millimeter decrease in height in the very first year. So again, if we're not replacing it, we cause that cascade of destruction that can happen because it's like having a tree and you've got three trees and the middle tree needs to come out. You take that middle tree out. If you don't put new soil in or a new tree in there to hold everything in place, those adjacent trees are going to slide down into that spot. That's called that shifting and super eruption. That is the normal process of what's going to happen. And when that happens in someone's mouth, it doesn't just cause all these other issues, which it does, periodontal disease, whatnot, but it also can cause, TMJ issues and headaches because now their occlusion's off. There are so many factors involved why dental implants are a necessity when someone has a tooth removed. Most patients have no clue this happens to them. They don't know they're losing bone. When they have their teeth missing and they're wearing dentures, they actually will say, well, I think I'm losing weight, or the denturist or the dentist didn't make my dentures very good, and they're constantly moving around in my mouth. Well, they're constantly moving around because they're continuously losing bone. There's nothing holding on to the bone so that we can stimulate it. This is just another diagram. And again, I'm happy to share my diagrams with anyone that wishes to have one of my diagrams. I'm a huge Salvin girl because I believe that Salvin products, their models are so great for demonstrating to patients. So many times I would say to a patient, well, we can put 4 implants on the bottom and we can click the implant, the prosthetic denture on top. And patients would look at me like deer in the headlight look, like, what are you even talking about? And I would pull out these models and they were able to see it. They were able to hold it. Modalities are huge for patients. They really, really do seem to resonate when we're able to demonstrate. So that's a huge factor in there. Um, this was something that I got from Dr. Carl Misch as well, because yeah, it improves, implants can improve so much: digestion, self-esteem, taste, and speech, but it even improves the safety factors. So take a look at where this person dropped their partial denture and swallowed it in their mouth. And take a look at the picture with the right, with the arrow that just went in. Look at his dentition. I mean, you can see there's a lot of bone loss there, and there's teeth that look like they're almost mobile. This poor person, again, started off with probably one tooth, and it just became a cascade of destruction. It just kept going. Why are we not treating one tooth with a one tooth solution? This is what I want to see done. Advantages of implant supported teeth: maintain bone. Implants in general, they maintain bone. This will maintain the vertical dimension of the face. People are always going out and trying to spend all this money to make themselves feel youthful. Well, losing teeth is one of the first signs that you will start to age so much more rapidly than anyone else. So this is really, really going to help. It's going to help keep the occlusion in your bite. It's going to improve your overall psychological health. You're not going to have those self-esteem and low confidence issues. It's going to be such an advantage for you. The implant supported improves your speech. It, when you have something that's not removable, you don't have to have all that flange. And yet, I'm a huge supporter of all overdentures and locators. I'm a huge support, especially if somebody does need to remove them on a daily basis to help take care of them. Absolutely. There's no harm in that. So after just 2 months, we started off going down to 50%, down to 6 PSI. And now someone that would receive, implants with an implant supported prosthesis, this is an all on four concept, that PSI can increase by 85% over just 2 months. That's just stimulating everything again and using it. This is somebody, can this person have this the rest of their life? Providing they take care of it the way you want them to take care of it and they're compliant. There are so many reasons, and this page is going to come on here, why dentures are not good. You're going to have bone loss. Bone loss doesn't continue. As you're wearing dentures, they're uncomfortable. You're going to have sore spots. Dogs love to eat the dentures. Dentures can break. They're hard to speak with. They're hard to eat with. You have a lack of taste. Social economics. Again, we're going back to socialization. Facial appearance. Your facial appearance will age even wearing the dentures. Even though you can have the bulbous in the front, they're still. Your occlusion is always going to be a little bit challenged because it's really hard to get proper occlusion with full dentures. TMJ issues, headaches, increased cost down the road because now you want to convert things. And you know what? You may not even have an option down the road to take it to the next level. Aging appearance. Witch's beak, as I said earlier, teeth are going to shift. The food impaction is going to get caught. Decay is going to happen. If you have a missing tooth and you don't replace it and teeth shift, people always say to me, like, how do you get periodontal disease? Well, you get food impaction because there was a slight margin in between the teeth. Now people are not flossing. And I ask every single time I do webinars and webinars and seminars, I'm always asking, are you going to go floss today after lunch? Are you going to floss before you go to bed tonight? And I'm always seeing just one or two hands going up, especially with the lunchtime. So we're not flossing the way we should be. And we know we should be doing more, but that's what's going to cause it. Teeth are going to move up. They're going to move down. We don't have to use the clinical terminology here. Let's just call it what it is. You're going to get more wrinkles. Your lip line's going to get altered. Negative soft tissue changes in the jaw, which is not going to be pleasant. Periogum disease. You may experience additional health problems because now you're not able to eat the food properly. I've seen people that have gone really obese, and I've seen people that have become so psychologically affected with the fact that they're in dentures that they've also lost a lot of weight. You're not going to be able to chew your food properly. And so if you're not able to chew your food properly, you can end up with all kinds of stomach issues as well. And there's a negative diet effect on health. It is all correlated together. Do we have a question right now?
No, we do not.
Nope. Okay, we'll keep going, okay, because we're not too much further from here at the end anyways, and then we could open it up for some questions.
Yep.
So there'll be a negative and psychological issues. So we don't want that to happen, right? So let's take a look at the three and we can just break it down really easy. A bridge, bridge. We got one tooth missing. Patients will say to you, I want the bridge. The bridge and the implant basically cost the same amount of money. There's not much difference. But a bridge, sometimes people will say, hey, it's covered by my insurance. Well, you get that question over and over again. Is the implant covered by insurance? Well, I always say, great question. But of course, we're going to have to do our due diligence because insurance companies have all these little clauses And you have to make sure you're asking the right questions too. And they want to know, when is the tooth being extracted? How many other teeth are missing in that dentition? So the bridge, in more cases, will be covered because it's part of a plan. Well, I also know when people are talking to me about insurance, I say there are lots of insurance companies out there that will cover a dental implant. It's just that your employer does not want to pay the premiums. So if everybody paid the high premiums, we'd all be getting implant coverage for anyone that has insurance. That's what it's all about. So some people say, oh, well, if implant's not covered, maybe, the insurance company doesn't value it. Well, it has nothing to do with that. It comes down to the employer wants to give their employees, dental benefits, wants to keep it at 100%, maybe at a different fee guide, but they're going to have a lot of limitations because that's how much the employer wants to pay for premiums. So yeah, it's going to be covered. And then the great news is it's covered every 5 years. So we can keep redoing that bridge and expanding it from a 3-unit bridge to a 4-unit bridge to an 8-unit bridge to a 9-unit bridge because your insurance will cover it. But guess what? If you don't take care of it the right way now, in 20 years, how much do you think that bridge is going to cost you? And eventually that bridge is going to fail, and then you're going to get into implants. You're going to spend so much more money. And that's why we have to understand what is it that our patients are looking for, what is important to them, and understand their value of this. And make sure we're very, very clear and we can explain this. Because although their out of pocket may be more initially, in the long term, they're going to save thousands and thousands of dollars. A bridge is quick. A bridge is quick for sure. Their success rate, they say, is about 80%. I mean, the number one reason that bridges fail is because patients aren't flossing. They're not getting underneath the bridge, and then therefore bacteria is trapping underneath there. Not me personally, but I've been with my dentist where we've taken bridges off. The bridges were in pristine condition, but the teeth underneath were rotten, and sometimes is in early as in 3 years of placement. Patients are being put on so many medications these days too that are causing them dry mouth. Hence, the bridges were going to fail. So the success rate gets lower and lower, and it all comes a lot to even patient compliancy and being able to take care of them. And when you do a bridge, I mean, you're grinding down the adjacent teeth. You can cause them to end up with root canal and perio, if not decay. And of course, you're going to still have bone loss. You aren't doing anything to stimulate the bone. They are a little bit challenging to take care of. Don't get me wrong, I've seen some bridges in my 30 years of dentistry that have lasted patients over 20 years. And those patients, they're brushing and flossing and using their electric toothbrushes and doing everything and coming in religiously for their 3-month hygiene, 4-month hygiene, whatever it is that they're on the regime. They're impeccable. They're impeccable, but they're not everybody. Okay. So in the end, it can cost you a lot more. So again, bridge implant, single tooth can cost you almost about the same. Yes, a lot of times there's no insurance. Find out if you can even just get the implant crown may be covered. You still have the extraction that'll be covered. There'll be other things, but again, try to work it out with the patient so that they understand the true value long term. Because when patients look at you and they say, well, I can't afford the implant right now. I can afford the bridge because I have 50% coverage. So I'm going to get $1,500 for the bridge, and then I only have to pay $2,000 out of pocket. That's where that whole discussion has to come in and say, well, that's $2,000 today. But in 5 years, when that bridge fails again, and it now encompasses another tooth, because we're gonna lose one of these teeth, and that's what tends to happen. Then we're no longer at $3,500. Now we're at $4,500, and now they're still only giving you 15. So the fee is going to keep going up, and that's where the patients have to understand that an implant does take time. It took us time to get to that stage. Usually, it's going to take time, but the success rate is so much higher over the long term. There's no secondary root canal. There's no secondary decay that can happen, and it maintains the bone. Hygienically, they are to be clean just the way your natural tooth is. So It's a matter of conveying to our patients just how important it is to maintain our natural teeth along with our dental implants. And in the end, I've always said that they're priceless. A denture, obviously, lowering costs. A lot of times they're going to be covered again at a copay. They're not usually covered at 100%. They're quick. They're great for transitional purposes. I love them for transitional purposes. Um, they're better than what they had. Again, insurance will cover them every 5 to 7 years. That's about what they're going to last. Joy Millis is hilarious. Joy Millis is also a fellow of the ADIA, and she has says to me, dentures should be called. It's so true. They crack so much. When they start to feel like they're not fitting properly, you're always getting in and having relines. Most people have no clue that they even need to have the relines. Bone loss will continue to happen. Sore spots are going to be there. Gagger, people that don't even realize they're a gagger, well, there'll be an opening for them. And it does take a lot of time to adjust. Even when I had patients going into transitionals, I would say to them, dentures are like a brand new pair of really, really good Italian leather shoes. And don't ask me why I said Italian, but I did. And it would just give them that idea that the leather was tougher. And I said, but by wearing them day in, day out, they will start to feel more comfortable and you will get used to them. So instead of having patients call you, oops, let me go back. Instead of having patients call you day in, day out, I have a sore spot, I have a sore spot. I hope you all could hear that. So again, that's where we're at. Facts and figures real quick, and then we're finishing up. As of Tuesday, April 16th, 2024, the world denominator showed that the United States population was 341 million people. And the list goes on. There's a reason I'm showing you this, okay? The median age in the US is 38.1. That number has gone up, and the population has almost doubled since 1955. There are more than 40 million Americans that are missing all their teeth in one or both jaws, and 180 million Americans are missing at least one tooth. 15 million people in the US have crown and bridge that replace these missing teeth. 18 to 20% of all US dentists are placing implants, which equals 39,000. Dentists place anywhere between 50 to 60 on an average per year. 3 million people in the United States have implants, and that number is growing by 500,000 annually. How many Americans are missing all of their teeth in one or both jaws? 40 million. If you said 40 million, you are correct. It is 40 million. That is the entire population of Canada. So that means all of us out here in Canada, all you Canucks, we all have no teeth. Aha, laugh at that. Most of the time, people don't even know what they want until you show it to them. You don't tell me it's about money, because as soon as the new iPhone 15 comes out, everyone's like, oh, I got to go get myself a new phone. The new phones are $2,000. 4 billion people on this earth use a mobile phone, and yet only 3.5 billion of them use a toothbrush. Stop judging your patients. Stop trying to assume whether they can afford this treatment or they can't. Present the treatment. Be empathetic. Learn as much as you possibly can. Join me in Orlando, September 26th to 28th, for an exclusive opportunity to experience our brand new practice management and implant coordinator certification program. That's the one I'm going to be doing. There will be a dental assisting program as well. There's also a dental hygiene program. Again, all the things that I shared with you earlier. Come down, spend the weekend with us, have lots of fun. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here this evening with me. I hope you enjoyed that presentation. This is my contact information. That is my QR code. If you want to give me a 5-star Google review, I only accept 5-star Google reviews, by the way. It has been a pleasure. I'm going to come back and start my video. If anyone has any questions, I'm here. Let's answer them.
Thank you so much, Karen. I don't see any questions in here just yet.
No questions coming up.
Yeah, I apologize for interrupting you. I had put my phone number into the chat. The number you had on your screen was not correct for me, so I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
The right one was out there.
Okay, great. I'll get that before we hang up then tonight too, just so I can update my number as well. Thank you for letting us know that. So yeah, if no one has any, oh, here comes a question. Let's take a quick look. I find they come. No questions. Sandy, you've got a question? Hi, Lynn. Just saying hi. Hi, Sandy. How you doing? Lynn is there. I see Lynn Penchek joined us tonight. I saw a few people that I knew had joined us tonight. So excited to see you all here. Thank you so much. Thanks for saying hi, Sandy. Well, I don't think we've got any other questions, which means that maybe I did a good job.
You did a great job. We really appreciate Karen kicking this whole webinar series off. Don't forget, the next one will be on May 1st, where Vavi will be covering the mastering the basics of dental implants. So we look forward to seeing all of you there. And of course, as Karen mentioned, mark your calendars for September to join us in Orlando. Thank you again, Karen.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity. Good night, everyone.
Good night.